two. All right. Is heart disease still the #1 killer in the United States? We're going to find out tonight with our special guest, Brianna Alexander. Stay tuned. All right, thank you all for tuning in. This is the STEM Files, where we highlight the best and brightest of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics in the Black community. I am your host. I'm one of your hosts, Tariq Cardiac, Tariq Muhammad, aka Tariq Cardiac. I'm a biomedical research scientist with a primary background in cardiovascular pathobiology, which is pretty much the process of how diseases form in the heart and blood vessels. Now I'm going to turn it over to my guest co-host. Well, I'm just going to say guest host. I'm not even going to call him a co-host. He's the other host. Jabril, tell him about yourself, bro.
It's all good, bro. Peace and blessings, everyone. Welcome again to another edition of the STEM Files. I am Jabril Muhammad, aka Jabrilian Engineer, mechanical engineer with a background in material science and engineering, focusing on metallurgy as well as failure analysis. Currently working in auxiliary fluid systems and things of that nature. Great interest in all things materials mechanical, as well as the team's aspect of engineering. Really happy to be here. Excited to continue to move forward with this show with our special guests. Before we go any further, family, want to call out, let you know. Remember, we are streaming live right now on Facebook and YouTube at the STEM Files, and are on Instagram at the STEM Files, TheStemFiles. Remember to like the content, share the content, and engage the comments. We love to read the comments and ask any questions that you as the audience may have. This is for you. We want to make sure that all your questions get answered and that we have a great and wonderful show.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jabril. So tonight's episode is about heart disease. And as most of us know, heart disease is the leading cause of death in the United States. As a matter of fact, it's the leading cause of death in the world. But right now we are dealing with a pandemic of the coronavirus, the second strain of the virus that has returned since 2003. But now we have to deal with both the leading cause of death, heart disease, and on top of that, coronavirus. So today's guest is a biomedical research scientist as well. Very similar background as myself. She is also in cardiovascular biology, dealing with congenital heart disease. So Jabril, can you tell us more about our illustrious guest today?
Yes, sir. So we have Sister Brianna Alexander, a Philadelphia native, and is currently an NIH-funded PhD candidate in biomedical sciences at Rutgers University, Newark. Her work in the graduate school focuses on uncovering the mechanisms of cardiovascular development in the context of congenital heart disease. She has attended and presented at workshops and seminars, as well as national and international conferences, including one in Nara, Japan. In the graduate school, Brianna also writes for the iJobs blog, a career exploration program for graduate students. Brianna's interest in research and development began while doing a summer internship at Monell Chemical Synthesis Center in Philadelphia, where she studied the signaling mechanism of taste cell development. Upon graduating from the Pennsylvania State University, she jump-started her graduate career at Jefferson University in Philadelphia, where she spent 2 years before transferring to Rutgers. While at Jefferson, she gained technical experience in the lab and took courses to advance her research. She also tutored other graduate students and participated in an initiative to develop storybooks for orphans across the world. Brianna is passionate about science, medicine, mentoring, and the process of making science accessible to others. Her hobbies include writing, reading, gardening, volunteering, and enjoying activities in nature. She also loves to laugh. Knock, knock. No. Got her.
Oh, man. Well, thank you so much, Sis Britt, for joining us. We're looking forward to our conversation tonight. Yes, ma'am. So can you kind of go into a little bit more into your journey thus far? How did you get involved in cardiovascular research, or what was it about the science of the human heart and its development that got you interested in studying something like that?
Yeah, so the heart is actually a very interesting organism. And I don't know if many people know this or not, but the heart is actually the first organ that actually forms during development. So that process of development in utero. So in many ways, I feel like my project kind of found me because I've always been interested in the process of development and how that actually, after 9 months, you have a whole human. So I've always been interested in that process. And I feel like in many ways, this project kind of matched with me, especially because, I've just always found that so fascinating, the process of human life and birthing and, that kind of thing.
Mm. When you were in school, at what point in your education were you like, okay, this is it, this is like what I want to do with my life?
So actually, when I first started college, I wanted to go into psychology, and I changed my mind a lot because I knew I wanted to study development, but I really didn't know in what capacity. I didn't know, if I wanted to study the social aspect of it, the biological aspect of it. So I started to take a lot of anatomy and physiology courses, and I took some embryonic courses as well. And that's when I realized this is really interesting. And so whenever I did the apprenticeship at Monell, when I was actually able to do research, I found, okay, I can actually couple my interest in development with also, my interest in research and wanting to to do research to answer questions that could actually help improve the human condition. That's when things kind of started to click. It was around that junior year of college. I was like, okay, I can put the development with the research together in this field. So, yeah.
Great. Before we continue, Sister Brianna, can you back up just a little bit? We want to make sure we get your whole torso in the frame. There we go. Perfect. All right, Jay, what you got?
So I love how you brought up, the diversity of your background. One of the things I want to go back to is when you talked about attending and presenting at workshops and seminars, as well as national and international conferences, including one in Nara, Japan. One thing I always talk to people, young people, more seasoned individuals, is the importance of traveling in general, and particularly as it pertains to STEM and other related endeavors. How has your multifaceted background with going to different places and attending these workshops, going overseas and presenting as well, kind of positively impacted and kind of expanded your mindset as it pertains to your field as well as STEM in general?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So for me, I think having that, cultural exposure and being in different environments and talking to different people has really made me more fearless. I'm not so worried and not so scared anymore to talk about science because I realize how important it is. And I realize that when you do talk about your science, people are generally very interested, right? They ask you questions, you can ask them questions. This is how you form meaningful networks and collaboration. So, I think that is definitely something that's crucial to the experience of being a scientist and, just learning and how to communicate data, how to talk to other people, how to present your work, and also how to build a collaborative network that you can, go back to and rely on later. So.
Nice. Collaborative network.
Yeah.
No, go ahead, bro. My bad. Go ahead.
No, you good. I was just gonna say, you mentioned something very key when it comes to educating people about your science. We're living in a world where science is often miscommunicated or poorly communicated, and it's like it's one of the main reasons why a lot of us, Black people in general, or just people in general, don't like choosing science as like that go-to career. So some people want to be actors, athletes, or the I'm not going to say the easier things to attain, but the less mentally challenging things to attain. So can we speak on the importance of actually being able to communicate science well? Because I do a lot of science videos where I'm educating people on certain scientific topics, and I try to keep it as concise and as clear as possible. But let's talk about the importance of being able to communicate science effectively and allowing people to understand what you're talking about so that it can one day encourage them to go into a science field or just understand where you're coming from as an individual. Let's talk about a little bit about that.
Good question.
So one thing that I've actually found is that when you communicate your work in a way that is accessible, in a way that people can understand, you'll find that people are very they're interested, right? They have questions, they want to know more. And like I mentioned earlier, it fosters this, two-way street where not only are you teaching and learning, but they are also teaching and learning. And so I had something happen to me like a few years ago where I was going home and I was in an Uber at the time, and my driver, I was just talking to him about my work and everything. And he actually told me about a biomedical scientist, Everett E. Just, who actually years ago wrote an actual science textbook on embryology and development. And that just was mind blown. And so I just think that, when you talk to people about your work, they're interested in it. And it's a way to foster new scientists, because that's what we want. We want people to be interested in our work and, not to think of it as something that's like, I'm in the lab, I'm doing these experiments, no one knows what's going on, but to be interested in it and to be excited about it, especially because, I'm, for example, doing something that's translational and that, can actually affect, human condition. Hopefully, God willing, once I graduate, I have found something that actually will be useful for our community. So I think that's actually really important.
Jay,
I gotta hop in. big word. Translational, and to be utilized for the betterment of the community and the betterment of humanity. It talks about how you're passionate about science, medicine, mentoring, and the process of making science accessible to others. When we talk about access, there's the concept of physical access. Do I have mentorship opportunities? Do I have apprenticeship opportunities? Do I have access to this equipment, physical locations? But there's also the communicative aspect of it, right?
Right.
And when you mention talking to people about your work and expanding their horizons, I just like to get into some of your work actually. So when you were at the Monell Sensory Center in Philadelphia, you studied signaling mechanisms of taste cell development. So let's unpack that. As an engineer,
okay, that's fine.
Illiterate on what that means. If it's not chassis and composites and failure analysis and stuff like that, it take me a little time. I'm sure, but it take me a little bit of time. So unpack that for us.
Sure. So I work with a population of stem-like cells, which are basically undifferentiated cells that haven't adopted a natural fate yet. And I was studying a pathway known as sonic hedgehog signaling, which is important for early development. And I was studying the influence of sonic hedgehog signaling mechanism in the differentiation process of those stem cells to become taste cells. And so it was a lot of work with cells and that kind of thing, essentially to see, what kind of factors are important, how do the cells behave, what do they have to go through in order to go from an undifferentiated cell, which does not have a fate or lineage, to a cell that is actually differentiated and functional.
So when you say stem cells, let's break it down a little bit more. We have a very vast audience, and I want to make sure that everybody understands what you're talking about. So stem cells, let's break that down to the simplest form. What is a stem cell, and what is the overall goal of stem cells?
Yeah, so a stem cell is essentially a cell that, one, does not have a fate already, and two, has the potential to become other cell types. So muscle cells, blood cells, many different types of cells. These are all specific cell types. A stem cell is sort of a progenitor or an earlier cell that hasn't actually become anything yet. It hasn't become anything yet, but it has the potential to. That's generally how stem cells are defined.
Oh, okay. So correct me if I'm wrong. I guess when you talk about research, you're saying looking at these cells that are either differentiating or non-differentiating and kind of seeing what determines what their fate will be, or like how they kind of get to that. Okay. So
exactly, and that's where the sonic hedgehog comes in.
Zoom in on that part a little more. That's where my mind went. I was trying to make sure I understood that part. Could you unpack that one more time? Yes, please do.
I'm sorry, can you say the question?
that part about it differentiating again, that was the part I was trying to wrap my head around a little bit more.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so what I was doing is I was looking at these stem cells, and I was looking at the influence of the sonic hedgehog pathway, the signaling pathway, to see what role that pathway plays in the differentiation of those stem cells to becoming taste cells, functional taste cells.
Okay.
Gotcha.
That's an interesting thing. Okay. That's pretty cool.
Definitely. And so T cells are pretty much one of the main immune cells that help fight off infections in the body, correct?
Yes.
Got it. Awesome. This has been we only 14 minutes, well, 15 minutes in, and you know we've learned so much, but I don't want to veer too much off the topic. So just to kind of reiterate for those who are watching, this episode is about heart disease being the #1 killer and in the middle of a pandemic. Now, I know most of your research background is in congenital heart disease, which is disease that develops in children that have not been, babies that have not been born yet, or, you know, sometimes it'll get further into the pediatric side.
Yes.
But what is your take on, first and foremost, the coronavirus pandemic, and just in response to what the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said about what the pandemic is, the nature of it. But as a scientist, not just looking at it from not just looking at it from outside looking in, you have the type of background to understand what's going on with the virus. So just kind of give us your take on today's pandemic and how your area of research is still thriving in this kind of pandemic.
Yeah. So as he mentioned in the lecture, you know, this pandemic is a consequence of different things that are not different wrongdoings, right? This is a pestilence that has been sent down from above, from heaven. This is not, you know, something that has been, it's not going to be something that's going to be easy to defeat, and it's going to require us to retreat. As he said, it's, you know, and as we've been reading, it's going to require us to go in and retreat, and it's going to require us to go in and study and to really introspect and to pray. And as a scientist, I think, you know, people ask me this all the time, like, how can you be a scientist and how can you be faithful? Well, I mean, and that, you know, essentially faith, when you have faith, this is how you understand what, you know, you understand why and how science works, right? It's basically a basis for that. These are the tools given to me by God to study this by his permission. So they all go hand in hand, right? And so I think it's important as scientists for us to not leave that out of the picture, you know, not leave God out of the picture, because this is a very important part of our progress and our ability to move forward, you know? So the two things really go hand in hand. They're not necessarily separated like religion, and, you know, they go hand in hand when you think about it. So yeah, that's a really good question. And I really want to like think about that some more.
Got it. Yeah, that is, I would say it's definitely something to unpack as a scientist, because the different things that the Honorable Minister Farrakhan said in terms of what our scientists and our community's responsibility is. You know, we have to be able to take a problem, whether it be a problem that we started or a problem that was started from another entity, and be able to study that problem and use the resources that God gave us to study that problem. So I'm a firm believer in that. I'm a firm believer in using our talents to glorify God and to
Definitely
him and magnify him, and show people that, hey, look, scientists are faithful. Scientists have are God-fearing. You know, in fact, if you do not have a relationship with God, to be honest with you, I think the science would be, I'm not going to say no or not important. The science could be a little bit more effective in your community if your relationship with God goes hand in hand with your science. So I'm a firm believer in that.
I gotta dig a little bit, bro. I gotta dig in a little bit.
What's up?
This is a interesting topic. Not going to belabor the point too much, but something I wanted to bring up. You know, for people who ask that question, how can you be a believer in science or a scientist and be faithful? You know, when you think about something like this, right? Those of us who work for someone else, we go to a job, and you know we are paid a salary, right? And because of X amount of payments being received, we now understand that based on this pattern of events, we are to be paid on this day and on this day consistently in the future. So when you think about it like that, you have a built up and accrued a level of faith in your employer that he or she is going to pay you because of the track record that they have had. So when you think about the science, true faith is based on scientific practice. You don't have the one who is truly faithful is the one that understands the law of cause and effect,
Right.
the one that understands that if something happens, or if I am a bearer of witness of things happening to me, I can therefore be faithful of the fact that this is going to happen again, or it's going to happen in this way, or just occur at all. So that balance is really a healthy marriage when you think about science and faith. You know, when you
Right.
study the creation, you know what I'm saying, there's so many people who believe in a higher power but don't necessarily want to put a name on it, because then it gets into religiosity or whatever. But it's like, if the first law of the universe is motion, thereby chaos, right? But we see all these highly ordered organisms and events and schema, then how is there not a supreme intelligence behind all of that? So then now when you start to think scientifically, it buttresses the faith you have in there being a supreme architect or overarching intelligence that is at the foundation of everything we see. I'm done on that. We'd be here all day getting away from the main topic, but I'm glad y'all brought that up though.
I feel you. Jabril, can you tell our audience how they can interact with us real quick?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Again, family, we are streaming live. That's right. Live right now on Facebook and YouTube at The STEM Files. That is TheStemFiles, The STEM Files on Facebook and YouTube right now. Please like the video, share the content, and family, I need y'all to get into these comments and ask some questions. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, what's up?
Don't do this. I hear myself talk every day. Ask my wife. You know what I'm saying? I don't do this just to hear myself talk or Tariq there talk, obviously for the guests, but we want to make sure the guests engage, and that if you have questions, whether it be related to cardiovascular disease, her research, anything, we're answering those things. So please be sure to tap in right now and give us some questions, so that way we can move forward on that.
Yes, and just you know, I want to do some more word clearing. I'm big on definitions. I'm big on people understanding what certain words mean so that they can move forward. Because if you don't know what a word means in a certain sentence or paragraph, everything that comes after this is just, you know. So I want to go into cardiovascular research, cardiovascular biology. Even though to some the word cardiovascular may be self-explanatory, but for those who are not aware or don't understand what that term means, can you go into that, tell us what comprises of cardiovascular and what does not?
Go ahead.
Yeah. So, anything that is cardiovascular. So cardiovascular diseases are diseases that afflict any aspect of heart development. So whether that's the vessels of the heart, whether it's the valves, whether it's the muscles, any aspect of that heart that is abnormal is considered to be, you know, some type of cardiovascular pathology or disease. And so what it is not, I mean, there are many systems in the body. When you think about what it's not, it doesn't refer to the, for example, I want to say this is like basic, but like, you know, the limbs and there's hormones and all those other different factors that can, you know, affect, you know, other factors that can affect heart development. They are not, but cardiovascular in particular would be the vessels of the heart, and those that, like, for example, branch up out of the heart, like subclavians and carotids, which in the aorta, which I'm interested in. So, yeah.
Oh yeah,
I hope that like was a clear.
Oh yeah, you were hard. You were clear. I rock with the order tough. You know that. And for those who are watching, the Tariq Cardiac, that banner, there are a lot of people that think that that's actually my real middle name. So I only put cardiac because there's so many Tariqs in the nation. There's so many Tariqs out there in the world. I wanted to differentiate myself by combining my name with what I do. So if you see Tariq Cardiac or Tariq Cardiac Muhammad, just know I'm involved in the heart in some way. But in this case, it's cardiovascular research and development. But that's a lot veering off. I just had to kind of incorporate that to show, since we're talking about the heart. So you know, when you mentioned the heart and blood vessels, what are some of the diseases that can form in this particular system of the body?
Yeah. So I know at least, so I look a lot at the congenital defects, so the defects that are present from birth, like in the newborn babies. And for example, one of the more common ones is ventricular septal defect. And that's basically when there's a hole between the two ventricular chambers of the heart on the left and right sides. And the left and right sides are carrying different types of blood. One is carrying oxygenated and one is carrying deoxygenated. And so that type of defects where you have a hole between those two chambers allows the mixing of blood, both, oxygenated and deoxygenated. That's one type of defect.
Okay, let's double back a bit because remember I missed the word clear. So what are ventricles? What is deoxygenated blood? What is oxygenated blood? But what are ventricles?
Sure. So the ventricles are the two lowermost chambers of the heart that have most of the contractive power and the muscle in the heart. So on your right side, you have a muscle there that's actually pumping up, and the same thing on the left side. You have a muscle there. That chamber is also pumping up. So those are the two ventricular chambers. Now, oxygenated blood is blood that is actually carrying oxygen, and that's going to be important for energetic processes in the body. There's a whole explanation for that. But the deoxygenated blood is blood that actually is lacking oxygen. And so therefore you have to take that blood to the lungs to actually pick up the oxygen before it can go back out to circulation.
Got it. Jabril, you had anything to add to that?
So, as we're having a wonderful science lesson, I'm coming back to our research and the thing you said about, your research and your projects being utilized and furthered for humanity. I guess, can you go into some of your future work or where this is kind of taking you to and where you see yourself in your, doctorate or as you progress through this project, kind of assisting humanity and the type of things you're interested in and really helping with?
Yeah, so one big thing for me, as I mentioned already, is communication. And that's something that I'm learning a lot about in this field, like how to communicate to different audiences. And I think that is definitely very important, especially as it relates to the field of communication between medical professionals, scientists, and then people who are not scientists or not in either of those fields, right? So just kind of being in that realm of communication to help kind of like clarify, this is what, this is how this is actually affecting your body. This is, those kind of things. And then another thing is just doing outreach, right? Finding ways that I can bring science to the community, whether it's presentations or pamphlets or workshops. I actually used to teach for a little bit at the Drexel Academy of Natural Sciences in Philly. And I did like workshops for little children there. And, just stuff like that, science outreach and that kind of thing. And then science writing and communication, making sure that people actually, understand things that that they have question about.
Yes.
Awesome. But family, before we go any further, at this time we're at the halfway point in the STEM files, and I like to take the time to highlight a Black-owned business. We highlight Black-owned businesses that are both in STEM and not in STEM. But today's Black-owned highlight is in STEM. We have Black-owned solar power and generator company. Owned by Brother Ralph Muhammad called Power X Generators. They're Black-owned. He develops the solar panels and he also develops the generators as well. Very affordable, very clean energy. Definitely something you can use in your home. It's hurricane season now, so there are going to be many of us that definitely use something like this. And we can use something like this all year round. We want to be able to control the kind of energy that comes into our homes, into our offices. So if you're interested in learning more about Power X Generators, just visit them at powerxgenerators.com. Once again, that's powerxgenerators.com. All right, family, we're gonna go get right back into the program.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. So, we were before we came on the show, we were talking, and Sis has expressed that she actually had a question for us too. And it's we never really have had that before, so we want to definitely open the floor for you to ask your question, Queen, and inshallah we'll be able to speak to that.
Thank you. So I was actually wondering, how did you all, because this is a form of science outreach right here. So how did you all come up with the idea to do the STEM files, and what has your experience been having people on the show for the duration of, the time that you've had the show?
Mm. Jabril, you want to answer the
question? You can start off, and I'll take it right off you. I'll come back.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the inspiration for the show came around we've actually been doing the STEM files for about 4 years now. I actually, it took me a minute to actually remember when we started the STEM files, because at one point we were on Blog Talk Radio, but I wanted to transition into live streaming and video content, because a lot of people who are doing educational content are doing it in this format, if they're online, you know. So at the time, it was the name of the program was actually coined by Sister Bernice Muhammad out of Florida, out of Miami, Florida. She came up with the name The STEM Files, and it was kind of just a play on the X Files, and kind of incorporating science and technology in the Black community with that TV show.
Right.
Everybody knows about the X Files. Wanted to kind of spin on that. And we've had a great time. You know, we did 2 years on Blog Talk. We're coming up on our second. This is our second year on live stream. You know, so we love it. We love it. It's an awesome experience. We get to learn so much. We get to talk with so many people and network with so many individuals. But I'm not going to talk too much on it, because I know Jabril got his own experiences with it.
No, so you really hit it on the head. I think even going deeper than that. So outside of the STEM files, Brother Tariq and I are business partners for Original Man Scientific, which is a research and development company geared towards delivering the advantages of R&D to our communities. One of the things we always talked about was, you know, it's one thing you walk through our communities, a lot of them, if you want to call it the hood, you want to call it, you know, just where we live, you see a lot of things, whether it be, you know, places for us to spend our money, right? Sneaker stores, you know, the corner store, you know, check cashing places, and a gym, maybe a playground that's not upkept, but you really didn't see, you know, imagine seeing a maker space or a place in our community. You have an idea, you can come right in and have people that look just like you be able to create something from scratch and be able to really get intellectual property protection and see your dream become a reality for something that you thought about while sleeping or just have been thinking about for a long time, but didn't know you could do this. When we thought about the STEM files, we were like, you know, so many of us are in STEM doing great things, but don't necessarily have a voice. So we wanted to be that voice for the Black community primarily, other underrepresented groups of people. Hey, we're in STEM and we're killing it. You know what I'm saying? Whether in industry, in academia, doing for self, and in business, and in a number of different STEM fields, whether it be as an engineer, as a scientist of some sorts, you know, as a researcher, you know what I'm saying, in the life sciences, in the formal sciences. So giving that voice and making sure that other people who look like us knew, oh, snap, let me follow them. Let me inquire about them. Let me work for them. Let me have my daughter or son who's interested in this see that, hey, this is a potential mentor that you can link up with. You know, we've had people, you know, so many different types of people on, and people express to us, you know, at the mosque, outside the mosque, how much they really enjoy to learn from this and start to pursue things just based off that. So it really goes back to your whole access situation and comment, really providing that access and just being one more layer of how we do it.
Wow, that's really fantastic. It's very inspirational. Representation is very important.
Yes, ma'am.
Extremely
we will be
important.
looking to have you help us out.
Yes. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much again for joining us this evening, Sister Brianna. For those who are watching, this is the STEM Files, where we highlight the best and the brightest in the Black community in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. You can follow us on Facebook, like the page, the STEM Files. Same thing on YouTube, the STEM Files. Go ahead and subscribe, hit the notification button so you can know when we're going live and when we have new content up, as well as on Instagram at the STEM Files. This has been an amazing show so far. We're definitely looking forward to working with you in the future. One question I had was in regards to how your research is funded, how your research has been able to maintain its funding, and how others outside of the United States government can help you with your research. So can you kind of go into your funding, how that process for scientific research works, and how can others get involved?
Yeah, so a lot of it depends on what you want to apply for. So I applied for a pre-doctoral fellowship, and that was an extensive document and took a lot of time. But what it is that I had to have a certain amount of preliminary data. And then I spent a couple of months just kind of writing everything up, going over the rationale, writing and editing, writing and editing, writing and editing. And then, you find out if you're funded. And in my case, prayerfully, I was actually funded when I got funded, I was, I think, in my second or so year. And it's usually not common for people to get funded, when they are, earlier on, because they have still, again, very preliminary data. You may not have so much of a narrative, but a lot of it is researching to see what is out there, and then, doing the work so that you have enough of a story and enough of a narrative to present your work in a way that, you can say this, there is a need for this. There is a need for this so that you can get funded.
Mm. So in terms of like the, and this is kind of going back to the funding process. When you're when you're looking into applying for scientific research, is there anything in particular that they require? Like, do they have to have some level of control or say so into how your research is conducted, or how does that work?
I think it depends on like the institution and where you're getting your funding from. I mean, there are definitely certain sections that are required. There's like, you need to have preliminary data. You need to have, something that shows that like you need to have a full workup of what you want to do going forward, an outline of your experimental plan, that kind of thing. But there are certain things that are pretty generic that are required, but I think more specific requirements will definitely depend on the type of funding and where you're getting it from.
So, in addition to just, we talk about funding, right? And, in academia, a lot of people, they go in, they want to pursue their doctorate, they get their doctorate, and, they're known as a leader in this field. But, thinking back to our teachers in the Nation of Islam, we talk about doing for self, it obviously everyone starts somewhere, and there is you have to get the necessary expertise sometimes before you do go for stuff. So when you think about things like funding, you think about ownership, do you have any aspirations to have a practice or to kind of go into the either for-profit or non-profit field for yourself as it pertains to either research you've done or other interests around heart disease or medicine or something like that?
Yeah, I think the ultimate goal is to, that's the liberation aspect of science. The ultimate goal is for you to learn how to do things independently. Even now I'm learning how to be an independent thinker and to be able to lead a project and to do things on your own. Personally, I don't know that I want to stay in academia, but I think that I definitely would want to work in a capacity where I am directly giving back to my community and doing something that is independent in the field of, communications and that realm.
Okay, awesome. So we actually have a question from a one of the members of our audience. I've been waiting for this. It's about time.
Yeah, it's about time.
So here's a question from brother Daniel X. How can I get STEM-related kits or projects to use for homeschooling, not just toys and games, but real lab quality materials? Now, you can answer that, and I'll also answer it as well.
Yeah, that's a really good question. A lot of it is it's going to require you to do some reading about what other people are doing, and just not kind of like there are certain things that are just out there, like you said, there are toys, but I think a lot of it. Well, I'll say this: what does the person want to study? Because there are some foundational things that you will definitely need depending on what the person wants to study. Do you need like lab coats? Do you need like Pasteur pipettes? Do you need like Eppendorf tubes, different things like that? There are certain basic things that you will need depending on what it is that you want to study, and you can read about the things to find, okay, is this good quality, or is this kind of crossing that threshold, and is this really a toy, So you can also ask for the opinions of people who are doing science and who are scientists. They'll tell you, I'm not sure that's actually a really good tool, again, for what you want to study.
Definitely. And there's actually a company that I have a good relationship with that I partner with to kind of teach some of my students in the past. And he wants to be okay. So the person commented again. He said he wants to be an architect. He has a 6-year-old son that wants to be and an engineer.
That's fantastic. I didn't know about those. Maybe you both can answer.
Oh yeah, definitely. Actually, one more question. So well, I'll ask a question. Definitely. Let's go ahead and finish that topic with the tools. There's a company that I work with called Home Science Tools, and they're really good at providing real tools, real equipment to young people ages, I believe, 8 to 18. I think even some are younger than that, but most of their equipment and most of their tools is pretty concise and pretty clear for any age group to learn science and to learn different things from. You can purchase microscopes from there. You can purchase petri dishes, things to look at bacteria in. You can purchase test tubes from them. Just things that you learn science from. And there's also a company called, you can Google them. I don't have the exact website. You can Google them. It's called Black Architects in the Making. It's a company. It's a brand owned by Mr. Craig Descartes. He's a world-renowned architect, years of experience in architecture and architectural engineering. So definitely Google that, called Black Architects in the Making. It's based out of Miami, Florida. Definitely check them out. And so now we're gonna go to our next question. Sister Heather Muhammad. What she says: how can someone prevent heart disease, even if it runs in your family, or not?
Yeah. So that's a really good question. So I think one thing that you can do is you can be informed, be educated, and you can strive to make sure that you're eating the right things. For example, things like obviously like a lot of fruits and vegetables, a lot of whole grains and things of that nature. But sometimes it just happens that things occur in a way that is spontaneous and you can't really, you don't know the exact cause, So I think besides making sure that health-wise you're taking preventative measures to make sure that, you're doing the best that you can to sustain yourself, that some of it, there may be cases where it's just out of your control. But I think the best thing to do is just to be educated, to be informed, if you want to do that research, you can find out about, your family history, things like that. And also, again, I would say a really big thing is diet, because even if you have something, you can actually exacerbate it by just eating the wrong things, So I think that's what I would say to that.
Wow. I think just, if I may add on to that, you all can correct me if I'm wrong, being in the fields that you're in. But one of the things I always think about that student minister Brother Nuri always kind of jokingly, but not so jokingly, talks about is it's not that, we may talk about this particular disease runs in our family, but it really is that no one runs in our family. And so one of the things, so
that too.
A lot of
that's also important.
Heart disease, heart attack, a combination of diet, right, exercise, and just general stress. I've heard stories of people who are otherwise healthy, but just stressed out, whether it's home life, work life, not knowing how they're going to get monetary gain or take care of themselves and their family, and the general stress on top of the atmospheric pressure that's already on your body from the atmosphere and everything.
Right.
And that severely or negatively impacts you, right? And then just really briefly going back to Brother Daniel X's post. So I was homeschooled for about 7 years. And one of the things that was done for me when you talk about related kits and projects is, well, not necessarily back then, but looking at it now, Google and YouTube are like your best friends. Just going in there, typing in science kits for 6-year-old or science kits for my child, and then what happens is you'll see these different videos and even like sites that list out ingredients and procedures for certain projects, and then what you start to do is based on what you need, you procure that. Another thing, and I'm so glad, I feel like this is a lot of talk I'm talking right now, is I'm actually in the process of actually starting a mentorship program centered around STEM for young men. And one of the things that we don't always think about is in this ever evolving environment due to COVID is the importance of having a virtual presence. And you can definitely align yourselves in research independent contractors that have a STEM background and are willing to go through certain experiments and have a curriculum for your child. That is something to think about as well as you're pursuing homeschooling and have a child that's interested in STEM like that.
Excellent point. And I definitely bear witness to what Jabril is saying. I was homeschooled as well, from like 4th to 10th grade, and I'm telling you right now, my mother's resource and her tenacity to even take our education in her hands, like that alone is like an amazing feat for a parent to be like, look, I'm going to be responsible for my child's education. That's remarkable. But I think we have another question.
Yep, you do.
So we have another one from Sister Heather Muhammad. It's heart disease, and this ties into our main topic, and we touched a little bit on this. Is heart disease more of a killer than COVID-19? And you can come at it from whatever you can, because that COVID-19 and heart disease is like
they're both pretty devastating. They're both, I don't want to say pretty up there, but they're both pretty devastating. Because it's not like one has improved at the expense of the other. They're both still pretty, so I don't know.
I think, still, with heart disease, we talk about from a percentage, they talk about whether it's influenza or even heart disease, and they were comparing certain things to COVID percentage wise, how it, kills more people annually, so I guess in terms of what you're saying, them being deadly, you can die from both if you get them. And I think that, what we've seen though is, there is a specific, immunocompromised population that is being severely ill affected by COVID. Whereas, maybe for the heart disease avenue, there are still more, dying and being killed off at this time, as it in comparison to COVID. So I guess is that still like the case in terms of the numbers and percentages?
I'd like to shed some light on that if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just to kind of backtrack on what you were saying about immunocompromised or people who are predispositioned to have a worse to have a difficult time with dealing with COVID. Heart disease, diabetes, cancer, age. Those who are elderly have a higher chance of contracting or having a difficult time with COVID rather than somebody who doesn't. Now, that's not to say that somebody who doesn't suffer from these things can't get COVID, because it's very. I probably had COVID back in February after Savior's Day. I got like really, really sick. I was done. Like I was so bad that when I was coming back into Virginia from Detroit, the left side of my face has your face has nerves in it. The left side of my face, the nerve going down my face was in severe pain as I was descending back to the ground. It was extremely bad. But one of our brothers made a good point. He thinks that we should make the comparison over multiple years, because heart disease has been a killer for years. We're talking decades upon decades upon decades. So COVID-19, this particular strain of coronavirus is brand new. It hasn't been around long enough to really compare the two. So that's why I really wanted to have this show, because we're dealing with these killers in a pandemic, and a lot of the cases, and a lot of the cases are because someone has heart disease or has diabetes. So the cases of coronavirus are directly linked to the actual physical condition of that individual. So Brother Dan, you made a good point. We got to look at it over a course of a period of time before we can actually make that assessment. And Sister Heather, she said, I just looked up 647,000 die each year from heart disease. That number sound correct to you?
I think so, but I'm not 1,000% sure.
Yeah, I mean it's around. Yeah, it's yeah.
If that was like nationally or internationally, because I didn't have that figure in front of me. So
yeah, so it depends on where you're getting it from. So like it's kind of hard to.
Right, and that number is really just that's just here in the United States. It's much bigger, like all over the all over the world. But that's kind of a ballpark figure. That's kind of something that you can base the numbers around. But I didn't want to take over the show like this. I really wanted to hear from. Yeah, but yes, exactly, in the USA. Thank you so much, Sister Brianna, for joining us. We definitely look forward to having you back on again. We already working with you in other settings, so we definitely look forward to working with you even more and increasing our efforts to make sure that we come together as scientists and engineers. Jabril, is there anything you want to add?
As the less medically or bioscience literate person here, or least rather, I have learned a lot, been thoroughly fed. Seems like y'all was listening in the comments when we said engage, and y'all bombarded us. I love it though. I was
yes.
Look at all the questions in the comments. Praise be to Allah. Thank you, family. This has been another edition of the STEM Files with your host, Tariq Cardiac and Brilliant Engineer. We have had a wonderful, wonderful mind and sister in faith here, Sister Brianna Alexander, here talking to us about heart disease, and as well as her research and everything, just really educating us on things we can do, what she has done in her project, some of her aspirations in the future, and we definitely look forward to working with her and continue to bring you all the best and brightest in science, technology, engineering, mathematics every week. Again, we have been live on YouTube and Facebook at the STEM Files, THESTEMFILES, and you can follow us on Instagram for all updates on next guests, and also get clips on previous shows at the STEM Files on Instagram as well. And Sister Brianna, for people that if they want to get in contact with you, either discuss mentorship opportunities or just get more insight on what you do, how can they do that?
So I can be found on Instagram at _and_a_cup_of_tea. My email is bea469@live.com, LIVE. And then on Facebook, I am just under Brianna Alexander, and that's Brianna with 2 N's.
Brianna with 2 N's. All right, family, you got it there, and it's across the bottom of the screen as well. If you have any questions, feel free, please reach out to our sister. She's a wealth of knowledge and still growing, believe it or not. In what she's studying, and just trying to really reach the heights in this area and then branch out for herself in other areas. So, family, again, thank you so much for joining us. Tariq Cardiac, Brilliant Engineer, the STEM Files. Thank you so much, Queen. We love having you.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And just for those who are watching, our next guest is this Saturday, July 25th. We have Dr. Jabril Muhammad. I made a mistake before the show, Jabril. That guest I was talking about was next Saturday. So this coming Saturday is Dr. Jabril Muhammad. He is a human molecular geneticist out of the National Institutes of Health. He'll be joining us this Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. So definitely tune in, the same place you found this, right there on our social media handles, as Jabril mentioned. And thank you once again, Brianna, Jabril. This has been the STEM Files with your host, Tariq Cardiac and Brilliant Engineer. So definitely tune into the next show, and we look forward to seeing you all again. Peace.
Peace, man.